Okay, so thank you very much for all joining us today. I'm very excited that Project Exploration is going to be hosting this webinar on staying core to their mission, how Project Exploration shifted in light of COVID-19 and remained equity focused. Your facilitators today are Kelli, Beyer, Patel, and Natasha Smith-Walker. And before we introduce the facilitators a little more deeply, we just want to see who's in the room. So if you could use that chat function, just like Leonard did, and throw up your name and where you're from, that would be wonderful. As a note, we are recording this. We are going to post this recorded version onto the My Shy, My Future partners page, which we'll talk more about at the end of the webinar. But we hope that this can be a useful conversation that not only is useful for us that are able to be here today, but for folks who couldn't make it, who can watch our discussion as an archived video. So once again, the facilitators of today's webinar are Kelli, Beyer, Patel, the Deputy Director of Project Exploration, and Natasha Smith-Walker, who is the Executive Director of Project Exploration. We also have facilitation support. My name is Emily DePalma, and I work at the Office of Community Education Partnerships at Northwestern. I also have my coworkers Jen Lewin and Amy Pratt on the line, and we are here strictly for logistical and Zoom support today. So I'm going to kick it to Natasha to begin our session.
Thanks, Emily. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. As Emily said, my name is Natasha Smith-Walker. I'm the Executive Director of Project Exploration, and it is a real honor to actually see everybody that's on the Zoom and share a little bit of what we've been doing for the last 2 months. So before we get going, what I will say is today what we're going to do is review our mission, talk a little bit about how we've been doing this work. We are going to then show a video that will sort of go through the process of, or show the process of how we actually pivoted, and then we'll go ahead and take some Q&A. So to begin with, our mission is really around creating transformative learning experiences around STEM education. Project Exploration has been around for 20 years, and we're really very focused on equity and access to STEM learning opportunities. We were really founded on this principle that all young people that are minorities or underrepresented in STEM or sciences, and girls really get an opportunity to take advantage of those experiences. And so much of the work that we did was really still rooted in this notion of equity and opportunity. And so one of the things that I want to be real clear about is that the work that you're going to hear about, it really came from this place of, we are an organization that believes in equity and we believe in access. And so we did a lot of deliberate work to say, what is the work that we've done for the last 20 years? And then how do we actually elevate that work to continue to be focused on our core mission around equity, access, and opportunity to STEM education and STEM learning opportunities for young people that are underrepresented in STEM. So, working as a team, this was really interesting because Project Exploration had just hired a new program director. We had just hired a new program manager, and with our new program manager actually started the day that we actually sheltered in. And so we had to be really creative around how do we actually make sure that we're still connected to our team. So starting May 16th, every day at 10 a.m., we have done a check-in. We said it was a 30-minute check-in. It was really an opportunity for us to just say, hey, what's going on? Give us a way to be able to get connected to our team, our new team members get connected to our old team members. But what it really started to look more towards was, how do we start to engage this team? How do we build camaraderie? It was really about, hey, what's going on today? Or what's your week like? Or how you feeling today? But then it went into, let's do some BuzzFeed BuzzFeed quizzes. Let's challenge ourselves to learn a lot about each other. And so we've learned a lot. Yesterday, I did a quiz. The Disney character that I am is Princess Jasmine, along with 2 of my other team members. And so it was those kinds of experiences that went from just having a 30-minute check-in to almost an hour in some cases, because that was what was happening. And it was really a good way for myself and Kelli to really connect with the team, but also make sure that we're sort of keeping an eye on what was going on, and sort of seeing how our team was progressing through the shelter-in process. So it was also a way for us to say, hey, if there was things that were really hectic and we had parents, we have a parent that's on our team, like how do we make sure that we're helping balance that? We have people who are single and are living sort of at home and sort of by themselves. And so how are we helping to support those opportunities? And more importantly, it was really a way for us to focus in on who we were as a core organization and really start to build from there. And so this working as a team has been different, but I think it's been really rewarding, because for most of us now, we've probably learned more about each other in this setting because we've seen each other every day than we normally would have had in any other setting. So that being said, it's a great pleasure that I want to introduce our video, which is really our response to pivoting to virtual change. The one thing that I want to say before we play the video is that I want to re-emphasize, we made sure that we stayed core to who we were as an organization. Yes, we are a STEM organization, so oftentimes when you think about virtual programs, it often seems like, oh, well, you're a STEM organization, you can do that. Well, we had to think really differently about that, because we also recognize from an equitable lens that not all of our participants have access. And so what you're going to view is really our process that we went through to make sure that we kept equity at the forefront, and that we made sure that our student-centered approach was also something that was really valuable and important to us. So with that, Emily, take it away.
Were you not able to hear because my microphone was muted?
Correct, yes.
All right, let's start over, everybody. This is a learning moment.
So thank you, Emily. As Emily and Jen have said, the video is going to be shared with everybody, but what I want to do is really take an opportunity to introduce Kelli Beyer Patel. She is our Deputy Director. She's actually been with us since January, and she was an amazing partner in working with me and the team to go through this process. And so Kelli, take it away.
Thanks, Natasha. Yeah, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. Thanks to Northwestern and the OSEP team for allowing us to kind of share the pivot and the process that's worked for us. I mean, the video, I think, provides a really great, concise overview of kind of the process we walked through, but I do want to go more into depth. But before we do that, I think it's really important to point out that none of us have the right answers right now. None of us really know how to do this. You know, for the first time, we are trying to survive a pandemic at the same time that many of us are working from home for the first time. God bless all of you who are also homeschooling kids during all of this. And then, of course, trying to achieve our mission under this new norm. I mean, right now, people around the world continue to be really scared and frustrated and anxious about, you know, this new norm that we're living in. But that also means that more than ever, our work requires, you know, ingenuity, creativity, and ultimately a lot of buy-in from our teams, right? Our team members are being pulled in a million different directions. We're being pulled in a million different directions. You know, how do you keep them focused during this time? What Natasha and I realized was that the commonality that we all brought to the table, that passion for our mission, was really one way that we could really keep the team focused. And right now, the need for nonprofits like ourselves to focus on our mission and achieve our mission is more important than ever before. So constantly reminding our team of that commonality has helped keep us focused and has helped this process be a lot easier, keeping in mind that even though, yes, working virtually is a challenge, that if we keep ourselves centered, that the work becomes a lot easier, and working with one another through these growing pains is a little bit easier. That brings us to the challenge at hand. You know, how do we achieve our missions working virtually? To demonstrate how PE got there, I want to first share a story, the honeypot. There's a company out in the Pacific Northwest, Pacific Power and Light, who encounters used to encounter a problem every single year, where during the spring and the fall, there would be ice storms that would hit the area. Ice accumulated on the power lines, and ultimately what it resulted in is being unable to provide power to their stakeholders, to their customers. There were really two major stakeholders encountering this problem. It was the linemen, who were going out into the woods, getting injured, trying to climb up these icy poles and literally shake the ice down from the power lines. Of course, they were getting disgruntled, they were getting injured, they were working in terrible conditions, which ultimately resulted in their supervisors also being really frustrated, experiencing disgruntled employees and high turnover. And this is a true story. They did several brainstorming sessions with the linemen and the supervisors, and they were getting nowhere. Finally, someone had the brilliant idea of like, okay, let's even the playing field. Let's bring everyone to the table. You know, the secretary, our accountants, the people in the mailroom, we have nothing to lose. Let's try to get a solution together. And despite that kind of creative approach, they still weren't getting anywhere. And by lunch, the facilitator overheard one of the linemen in the lunchroom saying, you know, gosh, they really need to figure this out. You know, I don't know how much longer I can put up with this. You know, just last week, I was coming down from the pole after shaking the ice down, and I came face to face with a bear. You know, I don't know how much longer I can do this. And the facilitator, overhearing this, came back from lunch, shared that story with the team, and was like, okay, guys, let's be creative here. Can we train the bears to climb the poles? And ultimately, that resulted in a lot of laughter in the room, because that idea is insane, right? How the heck are you going to train the bears to climb the pole? But ultimately, once the team calmed down and the laughter subsided, you know, they said, okay, let's entertain this crazy idea for a minute. You know, what do bears like? What can we put on the poles to make the bears, you know, climb them? And somebody came up with the idea of Winnie the Pooh, bears love honey. You know, what if we put a honey pot at the top of the pole? Would the bears climb the pole, and, you know, they're heavy enough, would that shake down the ice? Again, a lot of laughter, you know, and ultimately the linemen being upset again, saying, you know, like, great, who's going to put the honey pots up there? That's going to be us. And so kind of facetiously, one of the linemen said, you know, why don't we get the fat cats in the office to work for once? You know, we'll send them out to the field. They can fly their fancy helicopters from one pole to the next and put the honey pots up there. That's how we'll get the bears to climb the poles. And of course, more laughter. Finally, it subsides, and the secretary in the room speaks for the first time. She says, you know, actually, I was a nurse's aide in Vietnam, and I was always impressed by the fact when injured soldiers would arrive in these helicopters, just the downdraft from the helicopters. You know, I wonder if we flew the helicopters over the poles at a low enough altitude that would be enough to knock off the ice. And the room fell silent. And guess what? That became the solution that they are implementing to this very day. But that solution might never have emerged without entertaining the crazy idea of the bear and the honey pot. And so that's kind of the story that we use to kick off our whole brainstorming session. What does it demonstrate? There's really no such thing as a stupid or crazy idea, especially in a time so unprecedented as the one we find ourselves in. I think it also demonstrates that everyone's ideas are equal right now, and we're all sitting at the same table. You know, PE's team is mostly young. It's mostly a new team. Natasha highlighted that in kind of her introduction. One of our team members, in fact, was literally starting on the day that COVID started, and we all went remotely. So we had even more of a challenge because many of our team members had never even met her face to face. And to this day, they have not met her face to face. Thanks to Ale for sticking with us during all this crazy time. But guess what? No one on the planet has all the right answers right now. And I think evening that playing field is a really important takeaway from that story. So how do you get your team to think expansively, like in the honeypot story? We started with an icebreaker, because ultimately what I think an icebreaker do is help us break down some of the walls and put us in a different mindset. What worked really well for us, and as you saw in the video, was using Mural, which if you've never tried it before, you know, start a free trial, check it out. We actually did all of our brainstorming for our pivot within that trial period. What worked really well for us was sharing a moment, a ripple, and an appreciation each as a team. A moment being a time in your life when you didn't have a control over your situation, how you let go and how the outcome pleasantly surprised you. A ripple, something someone did that inspired you to do something related. For example, buying coffee for the person behind you at Starbucks. And an appreciation, I appreciate blank for blank. What this ultimately did, and what I was really impressed by this specific exercise, was we got to know our team so much better. And I was especially impressed at the vulnerability that everyone expressed at every level, from myself and Natasha to the brand new members of our team. You know, not just coming to the table now as Kelli from PE, but Kelli coming to the table as a person with a full life of experience and knowledges outside of PE as well. So then after the icebreaker, we reminded our team, again, no stupid ideas, everyone's ideas are equal, and reminding them of the honeypot story. And then we kicked off with a question, you know, what is our mission? What can we still do virtually to achieve that mission? And on Mural, we used a template called Brainstorm Group Prioritize, which allows for independent brainstorming first. And then once you giving everyone enough time to throw their Post-its, throw their ideas up on the wall, then we offered individuals the opportunity to throw out their ideas for consideration. And again, reminding everyone, no matter how silly or impossible the idea seemed at first, we always came back to the bear and the honey pot. You know, for example, one of our team members threw out the idea of, you know, let's mail all of our normal STEM supplies to our students. And of course, my initial reaction looking at the budget is, oh my God, how are we going to do that? That's insane. Like, and instead of coming at them immediately with, no, we can't do that. You know, we have our budget, who's going to build them? You know, just the act of getting supplies right now is so hard. You know, we can think of a million reasons why these ideas aren't going to work. We're good at that. But instead of no, we said yes and. You know, we greenhoused it. As the facilitator, every time somebody would shout out an idea, I asked guiding questions and we greenhoused around the challenges. So Shanisa, yes, I hear your idea. Yes, and you know, what goes in the box? What materials do families already have at home? You know, what activities can our kids do with those resources? Is there anything else they might need? Is that what actually we send in the box? And suddenly, once we kind of troubleshot all of those ideas and prioritize our ideas as a team, funny enough, the idea that seemed most crazy to me at first because of our budget and because of the logistics of that was actually the first idea that we ended up executing. And our STEM at Home kits were born because, of course, the digital divide made a lot of different types of programming that we otherwise considered a little bit more difficult. We're still doing them and we're still greenhousing around them, but it's funny that the first idea that I was like, oh my God, no, we're back up, actually was the first one we generated. So then after all this greenhousing, that's when reductive thinking comes in, which I think comes more naturally to all of us. You know, what is our staff capacity? What is the budget? Is this feasible under the new norm? And what's gonna come first? But I think most importantly, and the question that I'm proud of Natasha and I for constantly coming back to is, are these ideas sustainable? You know, when we survive this thing and go back to providing programming in person, is it possible that these ideas can still be used? Will these strengthen us when we go back to providing in-person programming? And so even during this process of reductive thinking, even when the ideas came with challenges, we'd try to greenhouse them. And when we greenhoused them to the point of surviving those tough questions, that's when we could build them into our strategic vision and our work plan. And then once we had a work plan, we could really get to work with some newfound strengths. You know, at that point, we had our team buy-in. We were all centered on our mission. And I think the most beautiful aspect of this process is that our team's ideas, the full team's ideas, from our brand new person to Natasha, who's got 7 years under her belt with PE, all of our ideas were reflected in that plan. Now, of course, challenges remained, right? You know, our pre-COVID roles made divisions of responsibility more challenging. For example, our program operations manager, she's usually in charge of our supplies, our evaluation, our volunteers. The flow of volunteers and our supplies and stuff dropped immediately with programs not being able to run. Our special projects manager, most of her projects dried up or were halted. And then our SLC and school-based program managers are two really important people on our program team. Their whole roles and responsibilities are based on locations that we're no longer able to access in COVID. So of course we had to be creative. And that's where the project management tool Asana came in for us. Being able to assign very clear responsibilities, which of course we tried to align as closely to their pre-COVID role as possible. We were able to establish clear deadlines and prioritize. But what it also did, and I think what's really important while we're all working from home and it's harder to interact on a day-to-day basis, it provided us a full understanding for the work that needed to be done, the work that is being done, and what's on everyone's plate, which especially for Natasha and I as supervisors, helped us understand and ensure equity in workloads and constantly assess workloads and figure out, you know, again, how we can adjust and keep moving forward. Like Natasha pointed out, of course, there's growing pains right now. There's uncertainty. There can be loss of focus because, again, we're getting pulled in a million different directions. That's where our daily check-ins came in, where we did, Natasha and I were able to share important updates. As she mentioned, we always try to do something light, like a quiz or a share out. One day this week, it was what is our favorite ice cream? This morning, it was, what was the last song you listened to? We ask a genuine, how are you? And we continue to welcome that vulnerability. We want to hear about your whole life and know how we can support you as a leader with PE and as a team. We check the calendar, we check Asana, and then of course we address any questions, concerns, or comments. Again, this is daily practice for us now. And finally, what we're able to do now that the work plan is built and that we've gotten to work is that we're able to communicate our work externally. And in this, every team member has a role. Natasha and I started with developing our messaging document and boilerplate. Our messaging document is structured in problems, which is COVID, the effects of the problem, how this pandemic has affected our stakeholders, the families, the youth we serve, and then our solution, the solution that we developed, which is STEM at home. We then did messaging training for the entire team, taught them how to use that messaging document and how to use that boilerplate. We practiced our elevator speeches together. We practiced with different audiences, timing, scenarios. And finally, we were able to share out the work, and we were able to divide and conquer communicating what we're doing to our partners. Our favorite way that's emerged to do that is virtual coffees. We scheduled them via Calendly. What they enable us to do is paint the full picture, answer all the questions, because of course your partners are going to have a lot of different questions about how you're making this shift and how you're going to make it happen and how you're doing it sustainably. But it also enables us to make a really strong and pointed call to action. Can you partner with us to do this? Will you continue to partner with us to do this? So again, the video was the short version. Now you've kind of heard the longer version. I do want to close by saying that the process is still happening. And as Natasha mentioned, all of us partnering and working together, sharing knowledges and resources is so important right now. It's how all of us collectively as a community are going to come out of this thing stronger, and how the people we serve are going to come out of this pandemic stronger. Again, I want to say thanks to Northwestern and OSAP. While they were gracious enough to give us this opportunity to share what worked for us, we still don't have all the answers, and you won't either. It's not easy working like this. It's not easy working in this new norm. And admittedly, we're not always the best versions of ourselves in quarantine. I think that's been a fun thing to recognize in ourselves and our team members. We have good and bad days about hearing about extended stay-at-home orders, school and business closures. The curveballs keep coming. There are personal and work emergencies that we're still encountering on the daily, but we ultimately get to choose how we respond to that and how we deal with the hand that we're dealt. We're taking it one day at a time. Our team continues to learn. We continue to develop and document our best practices. We continue to troubleshoot and greenhouse around challenges. But I think most importantly, we continue to focus and remind our team of our mission. But an even greater strength through this process has now emerged. We have an amazing plan that we all developed that we can fall back on, which will not only help us survive COVID but come out of this whole experience and back to our in-person program stronger. And that now this pivot represents a very intentional part of our organization's history, which you can kind of see here about how we're now talking about this in the broader scope of our 20-year history. So with that, I'll hand the mic back over to Emily and answer any questions anyone has.
Thank you. I'm sure a lot of you have questions. There are 58 of us together right now, which is pretty stellar for only having announced this yesterday. So if you have a question, if you are able to find the raise hand function in participants, you can do that. Otherwise, you can throw your question in the chat or just say, I have a question, and then Jen Lewin is watching that chat and she will be able to unmute you so that you can ask your question. Or share. It doesn't have to be a question. It can also be sharing an experience, sharing something that you connected with that Natasha and Kelli spoke about.
Okay, it looks like Erica. I'm going to unmute you, Erica, so you can ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
To what extent has your organization's approach come from inspiration or learning from peer organizations, processes similar to this one?
So I will jump in with an answer there. At first, when we knew that we needed to figure out how to onboard, how to stay connected, we knew that we were going to have conversations and brainstorming sessions. And so I actually am part of a national group called STEM Push, and I learned about Mural. And so I reached out to Kelli and said, "Hey, Kelli, I think we should use Mural. It's a really interesting tool for us all to work on. And since we have since just sitting on a Zoom or a Hangout may not be the most interesting thing, or working on Google Docs, let's try a Mural." And I'm sure that Kelli was a little reluctant because she also was learning Mural. And the next thing I know is that she pushed out an amazing Mural that allowed us to go through this process. And so we definitely learned about Mural from a partner organization. But I think this whole notion around how do you stay connected to your mission and vision is something that I think all organizations have. And how do you ensure that you're still connecting with young people that may not have access to internet or devices? And so I think those are some of the inspirations that we took.
Yeah, I think piggybacking off of that, I think all of us were pulling from our best practices and experiences, like previously from before when we were all with PE. I think that was a very important part, as well as talking to our partners now and kind of being observant of what everyone else is doing and how everyone else is troubleshooting. So certainly this process did not happen in a silo. And yeah, it's absolutely with the help of partners and with the help of our colleagues that this kind of process developed.
Thanks for answering my question.
All right. So Steve, I'm going to unmute Steve. He asks a question about Asana.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me? Yes.
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 I'm doing fine. And our team, we stumbled upon Mural also. So that was really a fun tool to do, like little Post-it notes on a page virtually. So that we just kind of stumbled upon it and loved it. I was just curious, just with introducing new tools like that, did you use Asana before as a project management, or was that something you just started?
We just started. We were toying with a couple different models, and somehow, I don't remember if it was Kelli or I, but we started it. And just so you all know, TechSoup also had like a $5 admin, so you could actually upgrade it. So it's actually a pretty useful tool that it takes a minute to get used to, but once you get used to it, trust me, you're gonna love it.
Yeah, and actually it's become, it very quickly, even though we introduced it in kind of this time of a little bit of chaos, it really became something that our team adapted to very quickly and like really appreciated, especially as we're trying to unroll all this new programming or this new approach to programming. In fact, just this morning, our team was getting stoked about the unicorn feature. Every time you check a box, this unicorn flies across your screen. And again, in the light, I mean, keeping things light during pandemic, it's like the little things like that really count and has been helping keep our team motivated.
That's great. And I think it's like I told my team, never waste a crisis. And we started using Slack, and we'll never go back. Like, we are going to be using some kind of tool like that instead of email, because email is so many issues with it. So that's great to hear. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Deborah, I see your question. So asking about what's in your STEM box. And so what happens is a young person will get a box like this shipped to them. In their STEM box, there is a workbook that has that we worked with our facilitators and our team to create. And so they were done on Google Forms, but then Kelli, I don't know how she did it, y'all. She did something amazing. So it's a 25-page workbook that has the activity along with some additional resources. And then in the box, what we did was we found items, or we looked at the list of supplies, and we found what we think kids would not have at home. So pipe cleaners, straws, you know, the popsicle sticks, markers, balloons, tapes. And so our first box had a set of those items. And so we are currently working on putting together our May issue, which is going to be even more fun.
Yeah, I'll add to that. If you're interested in actually kind of what came from the process, we intentionally split up the webinar into a few pieces, which I know we'll be getting to. Next week, we'll be sharing more about kind of what we're actually doing with STEM at home with our full program team, if that's of interest.
Okay, great. Next, Leonard Parker from the University of Illinois Extension has a question about working with younger students. Leonard, you are unmuted.
Oh, thank you. First of all, thank you all for hosting this. I really needed this to kind of run some thoughts through my head. But secondly, my question is regarding younger youth. So my program can range from ages 9 to 14. And I'm just curious, and I'm glad you guys showed that box. So you can send, is it possible to send information out via mail to participants? Because the program I have is very interactive and it requires a lot of extra things to go with it. And so can we do that, number one? And number two, with the 8-year-old, they may not be able, so there's an activity with balloons I do, and they may not be able to blow a balloon up and tie it. So is that something that is okay for parents to get involved with, considering coming off having school during the school year and then on summer break?
Yeah, so Leonard, here's so two things. One, you know, yes, it is okay to mail things. We mailed out about 65 boxes 3 weeks ago. And we actually feel pretty good because of the 65 boxes, I think we've only gotten 5 that were returned. So we have to reissue them. Two, one of the things, we have done our pilot test with our virtual programs with kids that were kindergarten through 4th grade and then 5th and 6th, et cetera. And it is possible. One of the things that we learned from doing our pilot sessions is that our program manager is going to be hosting virtual conversations with parents to say, hey, when you get your box, there's going to be a workbook, just sort of walking through the process. And in that setting, that's when you're able to say, especially with your younger kids, there may be in this particular activity a parent needed. And on our workbook pages, we actually do say if there's adult supervision that may be needed or support.
Yeah, so yeah, as Natasha mentioned, I mean, not only do we have on the STEM book activities, the lessons that are going to need parent support, we're also really being intentional about incentivizing that parent involvement, because we know that, you know, that's really most important. That's what's going to help prevent learning loss, that kids with parent involvement in their lives are most likely to succeed academically and are probably the least likely to suffer learning loss during this time. So how do we incentivize it? What we've done is built out the Explore store, which when kids complete activities, the prizes, they earn points, and those points are traded in at our Explore store to incentivize parent involvement. There are things like grocery gift cards that parents can earn and families can earn, their family trips. There's technology on our Explore store. And so it's actually become a very intentional part that we're thinking about in STEM at home as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you.
So next we kind of have some other follow-up questions about the kits. So Susan was asking, how many kits did you send out? And also maybe what kind of feedback have you received about your kits?
So we sent out 65 kits, and that included all kits for students that we had, you know, all our participants. That number is going to jump up this month because we're also working with some partners to issue out kits. And so I'm anticipating that we'll probably send out about 100 kits for May. And we actually got a video back from a young person opening their kit. And I think by the big smile on the face that they said, oh, I got a lot of cool stuff to do here. We think that we've gotten some positive results. I will say that when we actually took them to mail, the post office woman was also excited and was like, I want a kit. And so she, without even knowing what was in it, with just us telling her, she was pretty excited about wanting to get one. So we're going to make sure she gets one too for helping us get 65 boxes in the mail.
Yeah, and I think in as much as we've intentionally built out a lot of activities that do require parent involvement, there's a lot of independent activities as well, which I think any parent can appreciate right now as well, is that the fact that the kid can receive this box and really stay engaged in something that's written at their level, that's really easy to address and walk through, and that we're also providing things like office hours and live Zoom programming so that there's also a facilitator there that can help them.
That's great. There was also a question, just a general question about feedback from Renee. Renee, I unmuted you. Do you have any follow-ups, or is there anything else that you wanted to ask about the kits?
No, I can always bother Natasha at the next board meeting on that.
Great.
Thanks, Renee.
Yeah.
All right.
To Caesar's question that I just saw come up, we're sending them out monthly, Caesar. With 25 workbook pages, we feel like that's a good amount of workbook pages for a young person and probably a parent to be able to manage for a month. And so, and honestly, one of the things, so you know how you have those lessons that you learn, a lesson that we've learned, and if Sarah Tinsman's on here, she'll probably be able to underscore this, is that there's likely a need for us to start thinking about creating another sort of process in our work around actually developing the kits, right? Because there's one thing to create the workbook pages, but then there's one thing to actually assemble the boxes, which means getting all the supplies in baggies and getting everything packaged, and also getting them out to the mail.
Yeah, especially when we can't, form an assembly line in our office to achieve that. Yeah, Sarah Tinsman, our program director, had the opportunity to put our first boxes together, and there's definitely some creativity involved in like making this a sustainable process, which we're still working on.
Natasha, I didn't know if you wanted, I'm here. I didn't know if you had a specific question. Sorry.
No, I just was, focusing on the fact that you had fun creating the first 65 kits.
Oh yeah, Santa's workshop.
And then Caesar, the kinds of things that were in the kit were some of the supplies that we knew that kids probably wouldn't have at home. So for example, tissue paper or pipe cleaners, the binder, the little metal brass binder clips. So definitely items that we did not think kids would have at home, and or items like paper plates where we know that parents may not want kids to use those because they may need them for, purposes that are, home.
Can you guys hear me? Any other ideas where they could buy like art supplies right now? Because I know like Amazon, they're taking almost a month just to get our art supplies. Some of our nonprofits are taking a while to get that merchandise into their office and distribute it. I know it's so close as well.
Yeah, so we've done Amazon. I did Michael's, Target. And so one of the things that we had to build into our timeline was enough time to get stuff in. And so we actually lucked out pretty nicely because those three vendors were all getting supplies out pretty quickly. There's also Discount School. I'll have to look for the site and to share that. That's another good site to grab stuff from.
Excellent. So I have Bruce Peterson. He's got his hand raised. So Bruce, I'm going to unmute you so that you have a chance to talk. I'm having trouble unmuting you.
I can do it.
Emily, thanks.
You're good, Bruce.
Am I good? Can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can.
Okay. Have you looked at the 4-H junk drawer robotics or junk drawer STEM program? I was introduced to this a few years ago, and as a set of 4 workbooks, and there are really all kinds of stuff in there using very simple rubber bands, popsicle sticks, and so forth to teach robotics, to teach computers. And maybe you're already aware of it, but it would be a good thing to review and maybe come up with some additional ideas.
Yeah, Bruce, can you repeat that so Sarah Tinsman can write that down? What was that again? The 4-H what?
Okay.
So Bruce, I'm sorry. Yeah. That's my program, 4-H.
There's my call, yeah.
We can send you that information. It's called Junk Drawer Robotics.
Great, thank you.
You
the one thing that
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, the beauty of it is stuff that you find in a junk drawer, you can use to do robotics programming with. And so it kind of gives you different lessons and activities that you can work with you doing without spending a lot of money, but doing robotics type things at the very simplest level. And then it can graduate to a little more advanced stuff, depending upon the age of the youth.
Great, thank you. The other thing that I want to say, and I mean, I know this is more about our programs, but the first set of workbook pages were pretty organic in the sense that our program director worked with our facilitators to develop. We are now starting to partner with different folks to start to develop content in those workbook pages that are very specific. So for example, Boeing has a whole series of activities on their site around aviation. So we're partnering with Boeing and OPAB, we will start to create some workbook pages and obviously brand them to be reflective of the partners. And so Leonard will definitely, I know we're working with Michael with 4-H, but we'll definitely make sure that we're connecting. And if you can shoot some our way, that'd be great.
There was a question from Kim about how they were returning the workbooks, and Sarah did respond in the chat. So if there are any further questions about the workbooks, we can revisit that. It looks like Deborah was saying, is there any time schedule for facilitator to student interaction?
Yeah.
Yes.
We do have office hours. We set up a Google phone number, actually 2 Google phone numbers that we are able to direct parents to, direct kids to receive help. Our PE Cares line is really directed at parents and connecting them with resources and support services that they might need right now around things like unemployment, education resources, etc. The STEM at Home line is really intended to give parents and students help around the activities, one-on-one support with a facilitator. We can jump on a Google Hangout or a Zoom together to talk through kind of the activities or the STEM at Home kits, the workbooks, how you share out that information and earn points. So definitely there's that one-on-one interaction that we also considered. The other thing that we actually are just kicking off next week is our live programming, our STEM at Home live programming. We are doing 3 separate age groups, so K through 2, 3 through 5, and 6 through 8, and a program geared towards each of them twice a week, and facilitated by the same facilitator, and giving the kids the opportunity to actually see their peers and work on activities at the same time with our program team. So both in those office hours via our STEM at Home line, as well as in that Zoom classrooms, which they can attend bi-weekly.
Right. I want to underscore one other piece, that all of this that you're hearing about was all items that actually came out of the brainstorming session that we did and the strategizing around how do we continue to make sure that we are doing what our mission aims for. So, working with parents to engage them, getting kits to go out to families, making sure that we're getting the kinds of items that we know young people wouldn't have, and staying connected to them is core to who we are. And but again, it wasn't just to create STEM kits to create, or live programs just to create. It's really a way of connecting the work that we're doing and making sure that we're still talking to our parents and kids, through this pandemic.
Thanks, Natasha. I want to be mindful of time. We've got 10 minutes left on this webinar, and it's great to hear a lot of enthusiasm around the STEM at Home kits. We had a feeling there would be some enthusiasm there, which is why there is going to be a second session next week to pull us from process to product, where the project exploration team will really dig into how they took all their thinking and developed the things that they are developing. So I just wanted to kind of refocus, if anyone has further questions about the processes that they shared today or any of the tools that were shared, to kind of utilize the last few minutes of our call today for that.
That's great. I wanted to highlight too, Susan from the Art Institute was asking about peer-to-peer interaction, so youth engaging with each other, which I know has kind of come up a lot in this time of transition. You know, how are kids able to still socialize with each other? I see Sarah did respond a little bit in the chat, but I just wanted to make sure that you had a chance to discuss that a little bit too.
So what Sarah's saying is that, yes, through virtual programming, they're getting an opportunity to interact with each other. And so the week before last, we started to pilot how that actually worked. And it's really interesting to see kids on Zoom and doing activities. But the other thing that we're doing for young people is when they get their STEM kit, we actually also give them hashtags and things to share out, whether it's on their, we're starting to develop that social presence so young people can take advantage of being able to share what they've completed. As we continue to do our virtual programming, part of the work will be to have young people come back to the online virtual program to work through their activity and or be able to share what they're doing. And another one of these ideas that we had is that Project Exploration has done for the last 20 years what we call reflection of knowledge, which is really our way of young people coming to a central location, sharing what they've learned throughout the year, an opportunity for parents and community and teachers and such, so forth, to come in and see what the young people are doing. And so we are starting to now brainstorm what that will look like, what that would look like virtually. So more to come on that.
I think the last thing I'll mention is our virtual lunchroom. I mean, we know that in addition to the STEM activities and that opportunity to do those on our Zoom virtual classrooms, we also have a virtual lunchroom led by our program managers, which really focuses more on social and emotional learning and sharing and working together with their peers. So that's another way where we're trying to drive home that aspect of our mission as well. The one thing I will mention, because I didn't actually include it in the video, is how that video even came to exist. The tool is called Powtoon. I'll put it in the chat for everyone just for spelling purposes. It's a little clunky to utilize at first, but as you can see, you can create a really impactful video without having to worry about, any high quality video or imagery. If that's not a strength that your organization has, being able to do those animated videos and get your message across, it has become a very powerful tool for us and something that we'll continue to use. But I think we got to highlight that today, just how great that feature can be.
That's great. I'm adding the link to Powtoon in the chat.
So thanks, Jen.
And the Hannibal Buress Foundation is saying that Craigley, is that how you pronounce that? Is also a great resource. So that's also shared in the chat. Those are all the questions in the chat. If there's anybody else that wants to either raise their hand or add something in the chat or any questions.
Feel free to throw a question in the chat. I just want to share out the information that's on this last slide here, ways that you can stay engaged with us. Please attend session 2 with Project Exploration next week. It'll be at the same time next Friday, from process to product, and there will be an email going out. There will also be information about that early next week on the My Shine My Future Partners page, which is the next Stay Engaged bullet, which is visit that site, view archived recordings like this one, and see upcoming announcements for upcoming events. If you have questions about something that Project Exploration shared today, their contact information is there. If you have questions about how we all came together and did this today for you, and if you have something that you think is valuable your organization is doing and you want to share it out, you think it would be useful for other orgs to hear about it, please email us at osep@northwestern.edu. Kelli and Natasha have both highlighted the importance of partnerships right now, and we agree. And so we want to hear from you. We want to help elevate the work that you're doing, and we want to help you help each other right now and moving forward. So that information is all right there for you.
And Emily, I just dropped a PDF file of these slides into the chat. So if you're interested in downloading that, all that information will also be in that file as well.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Jen. And thank you, everybody that's come out. I see a lot of familiar faces. I see the Sandefers and Steve, all sorts of other folks. So good seeing you all.
Yeah, thank you all for spending time with us this afternoon.